COVID-19 is spreading across the Brazos Valley. Tonight, we hear from doctors, plus outrage after a teen gets arrested here in Texas. We're hearing from the family. And will it be a great weekend to cut the grass or perhaps relax by the pool? Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines has a look at our weekend forecast.
Connecting the Brazos Valley, this is KRHD News.
Thanks for joining us tonight at 10. I'm Naya Gonzalez. As the Delta variant continues to spread, so too are concerns over future restrictions. KRHD News reporter Rachel Espaillat shares how rising cases in the Brazos Valley are impacting hospitals and ERs.
We've seen the domino effect the pandemic has on hospitals. More cases lead to more hospitalizations.
And that as hospitals fill up, some of those patients require longer hospital stays because of their more severe disease.
The Brazos County Health District says local hospitals are up to about a 31% in hospitalizations, which is about half as much in January.
We're busy. We are in the middle of another surge of COVID, but we're here to serve.
As we see more cases, showing up to the emergency room should be strictly for when it's an emergency because this helps healthcare providers.
If you have an emergency of life, limb, or eyesight, that is what the emergency department is there for. We're there to take care of those immediate medical issues that need rapid attention.
Doctors are reminding people their doors are open, but taking COVID precautions is still the best way to get through the pandemic. In College Station, Rachel Espaillat, KRHD News.
New evidence shows the Delta variant is as contagious as chickenpox. This information was in an internal report presented to the CDC, obtained by the Washington Post. The report shows the Delta variant may also pose a greater risk for hospitalization, intensive care treatment, and death than previous variants. The document says vaccines continue to be effective, particularly at preventing severe disease. Walmart is once again requiring employees to wear masks inside. The new policy is effective immediately in places with substantial or high transmission of COVID-19. Masks will still be optional for customers. Walmart ditched its mask mandate in May, but reevaluated the policy after the CDC updated its guidance this week because of surging COVID cases. Social media companies are reacting to growing pressure to protect teens online. New privacy settings are now in effect on Facebook and on Instagram. Starting this week, if someone who's under 16 years old creates a Facebook or Instagram account, it'll automatically be private. Only the people who they accept as a friend will be able to see what they post. Facebook's head of public policy, Erica Wood, says they are taking this very seriously.
So we certainly want parents to know that we are constantly monitoring account settings and privacy and interactions on the platform. We certainly want to make it safe.
Facebook believes these new settings will help make advertisements more age appropriate. For a closer look at the changes, just visit our website, krhdnews.com. 3 Bryan Police Department officers are now equipped to de-escalate situations better with the goal of preventing violent confrontations between those struggling with mental health and law enforcement. Since April, Bryan PD has been responding to mental health emergencies a little differently than before. Officers are now trained to further their de-escalation tactics and recognize how to communicate with someone in a crisis. The goal is to provide residents the resources that they need.
I suffer from mental illness. I have PTSD, major anxiety, major depression. So when the police come out, if they have knowledge on mental health, they can help us instead of just taking us straight to jail.
The mental health unit has responded to nearly 120 calls for services involving mental health emergencies since it began just 3 months ago. They also have completed around 70 home visits and nearly 200 follow-up phone calls. New video of a controversial arrest out of Kaufman County. Back on Tuesday, several people called 911 reporting that a teen was throwing herself onto the road. A deputy, only identified as Deputy Marlin, arrives and starts asking the teen what's going on. As they walk, he puts his hand on her shoulder, then grabs her arm. As he tries to calm her down, he tells her that he doesn't want to hurt her. Moments later, her family arrives and starts to record the whole thing. The teen is handcuffed and led to a car while deputies say her mother hits Deputy Marlin and then arrests her. The mother bonded out of jail and spoke about what happened.
This is my daughter. How can you expect me to walk up and just look at this man straddled in a position that I've never seen a police on top of a man or a woman Marlon, and my daughter is 18 years old.
The sheriff's office says Marlon used a technique that they teach. The teen was taken for a mental evaluation. The sheriff's office says Marlon is on administrative leave pending an investigation.
The war against COVID has changed. That's what the CDC is warning in an internal document from the agency first obtained by the Washington Post. New evidence shows the Delta variant is as contagious as the chickenpox. Variant may pose a greater risk for hospitalization, intensive care treatment, and death than previous variants of the virus. Now, the document says that vaccines continue to be effective, particularly at preventing severe disease. But when breakthrough infections happen, they may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. And with Delta cases spreading and more data on safety and efficacy of vaccines emerging, two leading health organizations are changing their language on pregnant women getting the shots.
We think there's enough data to transition from don't withhold this to we actually recommend that pregnant people get this vaccine.
Northwestern doctor Emily Miller is also on the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine's COVID-19 task force, and she says the subtle change will remind OBGYNs about the science available and to act with more urgency when it comes to educating and encouraging expecting mothers to get the vaccine. Now, those conversations between patient and doctor can be some of the most impactful when it comes to the vaccine decision process. Now, they can also prompt other questions to which there is available data, like pregnant women are at an increased risk of severe disease or death from coronavirus because of changes the body undergoes and the fact the lungs have less physical space during pregnancy. Now, there are no findings that vaccines impact fertility, but they can protect babies.
I think it's really impactful that we see cord blood antibodies to SARS-CoV-2, so protective antibodies that prevent infection passed from the birthing person to their baby. And so I think this really changes the framework from protecting the baby from exposure to vaccination to protecting the baby by vaccination.
Pregnant women were not included in original COVID-19 trials. There are global trials underway right now. Now, checking back in on the lineup. Now, with the CDC's eviction moratorium ending, what legal experts say you need to watch for as scammers may try to take advantage of your situation.
It's an unexpected alliance on Capitol Hill coming up. We see why a Democrat and a Republican are joining forces tonight and how Texas is impacted. Well, it's official. Both the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma will be SEC members in 2025. Both schools accepting the conference's invitation to join. It comes after all SEC 14 schools approved to expand the league and allow both OU and UT to join. A Texas Democrat and a South Carolina Republican are joining forces today. U.S. Rep. Henry Cuellar from Laredo wrote a letter to the president alongside Senator Lindsey Graham about her concerns about the number of people crossing the border and the increased risk of COVID-19 for border agents.
The bottom line for me is that we're urging President Biden to create a special position to bring order to chaos, put somebody in charge whose focus is just on the border and all the problems associated with it.
Both want Biden to name President Obama's Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, to lead the focus on the southern border. The Biden administration is suing the state and Governor Greg Abbott for Executive Order 37. That order would allow troopers to pull people over who are suspected of carrying illegal immigrants and turn them back to the border. Under the order, troopers also have the power to impound their vehicle if they don't comply. Governor Abbott says the order will prevent the spread of COVID-19. Attorney General Merrick Garland saying the order breaks federal law since the state can't enforce an order that goes against any federal official. Abbott releasing a statement about that lawsuit saying, quote, the Biden administration has created a constitutional crisis between the federal government and the state of Texas. This stems from the Biden administration's refusal to enforce immigration laws and allow illegal immigrants with COVID-19 to enter our country. Texas has one more voice in Congress today. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's sworn and newly elected representative Jack Azzelli. Azzelli won a special election Tuesday against fellow Republican Susan Wright. She is the wife of the former Congressman Ron White, who died from COVID-19 earlier this year. LZ will now represent his seat in Congress until the midterm elections. The district covers parts of Tarrant and all of Ellis and Navarro counties. A Texas airman who died in World War II is coming home. The body of Tech Sergeant Frank Norris was found thanks to DNA and his new dental technology. The Quinlan native was killed in August 1943 while serving as a flight engineer on a B-24 bomber. The plane was shot down while bombing oil fields and refineries in Romania. Norris will be buried in Quinlan. A date is still pending. And now let's get a first check of our weather with Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines.
And we are looking at a few clouds out there, but the showers and thunderstorms that were to our east earlier tonight dissipated before they really made it into the area. So it has been rather warm outside, and look at this, 88 degrees, feeling like 98. Winds around the south at 10 miles per hour. You definitely know you're in the middle of summertime right now here across the area. As we check out clouds and radar, we did have a couple of showers and thunderstorms earlier down to our southeast. Those have died out with the loss of daytime heating. But we do have a few clouds rolling on into the area, and I think those clouds will continue to push in for the remainder of this evening with dying thunderstorms down across southeast Texas. Most of Texas pretty quiet right now. A few leftover showers across far west Texas, and that is about it. It looks like that our upper low is slowly pushing back toward the west, so that's going to leave us pretty much high and dry as we head into Saturday. So here's your latest future track showing that we will have calm conditions for tonight with partly cloudy skies in the morning. Tomorrow, a less than 20% chance of an isolated storm. I can't totally rule it out, but I don't think we're going to see too much across the area. Then as we move into Sunday, I think most of the day is going to be pretty quiet, but by the evening hours, there could be a couple of showers and thunderstorms start to pop up, and I think our better chances come late Sunday night into Monday as thunderstorm chances should increase with a weak front moving into the area. So tonight, temperatures will be down into the 70s for us, between 75 and 77. And then tomorrow, highs in the mid to upper 90s, and it is going to feel really hot with the humidity. That'll make it feel like 105 in a few locations from time to time. So make sure you're staying hydrated, and the UV index also going to be high. So make sure you're wearing the sunscreen as well. As we check out your forecast, temperatures 97 on Saturday, 96 Sunday, isolated thunderstorms possible. And then here we go with a 40% chance Monday and Tuesday, highs between 93 and 95 degrees. And we may even hold on to some isolated storm chances for most of next week.
From the Great Plains to the Florida coast, no matter where you call home, you can see by taking a look at this map that every state has some kind of flood risk. 13 million Americans live in flood zones, and Chris Conti shows us some major changes coming to FEMA's flood insurance program that could impact just how much you pay.
The tide comes in, the tide goes out. Such is life by the sea, a fog of uncertainty that often hangs heavy over coastal communities nationwide.
You're at the edge of the earth, you're in God's country. The rules are very, very, very different.
Over the years, Gordon Peabody has learned to respect the water.
Well, a surge will take you even over my hand.
As a coastal consultant, he's helped develop innovative techniques for protecting property owners. Ideas like this wall of pylons that diverts waves when they come in.
The wave energy comes in, and then it's divided. Some of it goes that way, and some of it goes that way.
The shorelines that Gordon walks are here in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Like many communities, they've seen their share of floods, from hurricanes to rising sea levels. As a result, FEMA has paid out hundreds of millions of dollars in flood insurance claims to property owners. The money pays for things like dune restoration and raising homes out of harm's way.
It helps the property owners with their insurance because they're going to be safe, but it totally transforms neighborhoods.
But the rates that people across the country pay for flood insurance are changing. FEMA has rebranded their flood insurance program, calling it Risk Rating 2.0. Insurance rates are now based on factors like a homeowner's distance to the water, types of flood exposure, and the cost of replacing a building. The higher a building's cost, the more expensive the premium, and vice versa.
It's not just coastal communities impacted by these changes. Some 13 million Americans live in flood zones, be it by the ocean, a river, or just a small stream.
What FEMA is saying is that the closer you are to the source of flooding, the higher your rates are going to be.
Shannon Holst is a floodplain specialist. She sees these changes as a major benefit to homeowners and business owners alike.
I do think that this is an important change because they are coming up to speed with the rest of the private market.
And we also have this area here.
Back in Provincetown, building inspector Ann Howard is working almost daily on flood plans.
And it's paying off. I got to tell you, I'm exhausted still. It's a lot of work. It's an awful lot of work.
Efforts to manage climate change here have been decades in the making. Hard work that's paying off. FEMA recently dropped the entire flood risk rating for this town, meaning flood insurance rates here will drop by as much as 10%. And Howard sees this as the kind of model other cities and towns should emulate.
What we are demonstrating to FEMA by that is we are paying attention to substantial improvements, substantial damage to buildings.
Around here, they know there's no controlling the sea. Instead of ignoring the changes that are rolling in, this town is meeting the waves head on.
Everywhere we're living on borrowed time, but, up against Mother Nature, you're really living again on borrowed.
In Provincetown, Massachusetts, I'm Chris Conti.
Israel is now getting people 60 and older a third dose of the COVID vaccine to improve immunity. The decision comes amid rising infections caused by the Delta variant. Earlier this month, Israeli health officials said protection against severe disease was around 93% 6 months after vaccination. Pfizer reported it at 97%. Now, no U.S. or health group has approved booster shots just yet. Meanwhile, West Virginia will start checking immunity levels of older vaccinated residents. The state was one of the first to jump ahead early in vaccinating people in long-term care facilities. Now health experts want to know how protected those in nursing homes are. Last month, about 12% of COVID deaths in the state were among fully vaccinated people. Concerning possible connections between COVID and dementia. One Argentina study suggests the virus can have similar impacts on the brain as Alzheimer's. Now, it found changes can last at least 6 months in thinking and memory in older adults who recovered from the virus. In a separate study of New Yorkers, Alzheimer's-related proteins were found in the blood. Experts say more research is needed before drawing any conclusions. Let's turn to the news feed with some promising news for those who are looking for work because wages rose at a healthy pace in the last 3 months leading up to July, according to the Labor Department. Companies are trying to fill millions of available positions. Now, inflation is a big concern, especially with what you're buying online. Adobe says inflation is responsible for $1 of every $5 spent online, and Adobe also thinks that 2021 will be online shopping's first ever $1 trillion year in the United States. Now, if you want to catch a Broadway show, you better get vaccinated. Theater owners and operators have decided it will be a requirement. You also have to wear a mask during the show. Broadway is set to reopen for the first time in more than 16 months. All right, you'll want to take a picture of your screen right here because it is a list of all the brands of dog food recently part of a voluntary recall. The pet food company Sunshine Mills issued the recall as a precautionary measure. They say there may be elevated levels of a toxin produced by mold in the food. Food was sold nationwide under various sizes and lot numbers. The FDA website has all the details on that. The food can be returned for a full refund. People who fell victim to debt relief schemes are getting some money back. The Federal Trade Commission settled with companies that made false promises of helping people reduce interest rates on credit card debt in exchange for a fee. The victims also had money withdrawn from their bank accounts. The FTC is mailing nearly 8,000 refund checks, each for almost $300. The pandemic has made it even more challenging for people already dealing with mental health conditions like depression or anxiety. Houses of worship recognize this and are becoming a place that more people can turn to for mental health support.
We can't cure mental illness. We can't make schizophrenia go away. We can't make anxiety disappear. God has graced therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists with the abilities to do that. But what we can do as ministers is be with them, love with them, support them, and allow them to be open about their struggles.
Simply beginning to talk about mental health and how we can love and support and care for one another and destigmatizing it in the ways that unfortunately we had in the past has really opened up conversation quite a bit.
Both religious leaders acknowledge historically, faith communities have not done a good job of connecting with people living with mental illness or their families. Reverend Dan Milford started a mental health ministry at his church, Covenant Presbyterian in San Antonio, more than 5 years ago. It includes a moment for mental health every Sunday when they educate the congregation about mental health issues. During the pandemic, they've trained companions to pair with people in the church who are considered at risk. The Presbyterian Mental Health Network has put out a guide on ways to care for our mental health during the pandemic.
We know that mental health resources are harder to come by in rural areas, in inner city areas. People of color often have less access.
We think a mental health ministry should be as common in a parish as youth ministry, as grief support ministry, as prison support ministry. It should be just one of those ministries that's offered every place, because mental health is thankfully becoming better understood.
Deacon Ed Schoner is trying to make that happen through his work with the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers. Now, the work is personal to him. His daughter had bipolar disorder and she died by suicide in 2016. Now, he says at the time the church was the last place that he thought to go to talk about mental health concerns. He says currently only about 10 to 15% of dioceses across the country have a mental health ministry. Now, you can find more information at catholicmhm.org. You can find additional resources from the Presbyterian Mental Health Network at pmhn.org. The newsfeed starts with promising news for those looking for work. Wages rose at a healthy pace in the 3 months leading up to July, according to the Labor Department. Companies are trying to fill millions of available positions. Inflation's a big concern, especially with what you're buying online. Adobe says inflation's responsible for $1 of every $5 spent online, and Adobe thinks 2021 will be online shopping's first ever trillion-dollar year in the United States. Now, if you do want to catch a Broadway show, you better get vaccinated. Theater owners and operators have decided it will be a requirement. Also, you have to wear your mask during the show. Broadway is set to reopen for the first time in more than 16 months. Well, some shelter pets have come from such difficult backgrounds, they aren't ready to be adopted right away. Now, that's where the ASPCA's Rehabilitation Center comes in. And on Monday, how it's helping struggling pets learn to be great companions and how the ASPCA's effort to spread awareness across the country. But still to come today, major changes are coming to FEMA's flood insurance program, how it could impact what millions of people pay for coverage.
Jimmy Kimmel's up next, and Garrett Hoddle is back at 6 a.m. for Good Morning Texas. Plus, we're always on the 25 News mobile app. Thanks for joining us and have a good